So John Swinney, leader of the SNP and First Minister, at least until Thursday. Thank you very much for talking to the Scottish Sun. We do have limited time with you, so I'll jump straight into it. All the polls at the minute suggest that you're on the verge of a win. Maybe you think you are on the verge of a majority. Only a handful of polls back you up on that. Why are you so confident?
The issue, of course, is in the hands of the people, and I welcome the fact that we are in a leading position, but we've got to work hard to turn that into a win and an emphatic win. And I want to make that an emphatic win so that I can deliver on our agenda, because my opponents are spending a vast amount of their time and resources appealing to people to stop the SNP. It's about the only thing they're saying to the public, and I'm simply saying to people in Scotland, don't let the opposition stop us improving your lives.
Some of your opponents think the polls are totally wrong.
Well, I have no special insight into the polls. I see the polls and I look at them, but what's important is that we fight a campaign on the ground. And when I look at the scale of effort that my party colleagues have put into this campaign at local level, with the intense level of door knocking and communication with electorate that's going on, it gives me confidence that we've worked hard to engage with the public.
Let's look at maybe post-May 7th, when you're potentially back in government. If you do fall short, would you bring the Scottish Greens back in?
I'm going to concentrate on winning an outright majority, and that's my...
People will know that the likelihood is that you'll probably need the support of at least one party. Would you do what Nicola Sturgeon did in 2021?
Well, what I've said is, and I think this is important, is that I want to win a majority so I can pursue our agenda. But even if I win a majority, I will govern with a minority mindset, because I think it's really important that I signal in advance of the election that even if I win a majority, I will want to create common ground with other parties. Now, there is a caveat to that, there's a limit to that. I'm not interested in finding common ground or collaboration with reform, but I will work with others to try to advance issues on which we have common ground.
Let's turn to your manifesto and your top ticket pledge, which is, I think, to bring food price caps in for around, I think you said 50 essential items.
20 to 50.
20 to 50. I know in your speech you referenced 6. I went to Lidl. You'll be glad I don't have a bag ready to bring them out. But let's do a little quiz on the cheapest items. How much do you think cheese was, the cheapest cheese?
Listen, we're just going to waste the precious time you've got with me if we do a quiz like this. So
how much do you think all 6 cost?
Well, I think what are the 6 items you're going to put to me?
Cheese, eggs, milk, bread, rice, chicken.
I think that would be probably of the order of about £8, I would think.
Just under, about £7.
Well, there you are. So there, the First Minister knows what he's talking about when it comes to shopping. So,
do you think that is too high? Is that your fundamental belief? Because that is pretty cheap.
I think people can't afford that. That's the problem. And you know, I know people will say, oh, it's only £7 whatever for these items, but every Friday the First Minister of Scotland sits in village halls in his constituency and town halls talking to members of the public, and I am listening to real hardship. So I'm trying to do something about it.
This is set up for a row, though, isn't it? I mean, your manifesto reads like you've got no intention of bringing this in. You even mentioned the Internal Market Act. This sounds like you want a rammy with the UK government over it.
But by saying that, I'm mastering the issues we have to wrestle with in bringing forward that policy. So I'm doing that for the sake of transparency.
I mean, so in one interview with STV, I think on the day you launched your manifesto, you told Colin Mackay that it couldn't be done overnight, and then you said it would be quite the spectacle if UK Labour block it. That kind of gives your game away, doesn't it?
No, it doesn't, because I'm making an observation that it would be quite a spectacle if a Labour government intervened to stop a Scottish government trying to help people who can't afford their shopping.
Sure.
What on earth does a Labour Party become if that becomes an issue?
But the Fraser Islanders, sorry to interrupt, but the Fraser Islanders say it's almost certain, that's the exact quote, that you don't have the power. They say that it's designed to provoke a Stussy and it won't even provide any relief in the short run.
I have the greatest respect for the Fraser Islander Institute, but what I don't go to them for is my legal advice about the powers of the Scottish Parliament. And I do know that I have public health powers, and if people are suffering because they can't afford a decent shop, there will be nutritional issues that arise. So I need to act where I can to try to help people who are facing difficulty, and that's exactly what I'm trying to do.
I mean, what can you just? I'm intrigued, but what exact powers are you going to use for this? Because minimum unit pricing, that was on the basis of the harm that alcohol does in Scotland. this isn't on that same level. I mean, this looks wrapped for a legal challenge.
It's about the lack of nutritional value that people can get from the resources they've got available to them. Because, see, if we don't tackle that issue, that then becomes an issue for us as a government, because we will have greater public health issues to wrestle with in the health of the population.
How do you prove that in the court? How do you go to a court and say, you know, the fact that this costs 50p, a loaf of bread, 55p in Lidl, that's not enough for...
Well, I think the first thing I'd say is that I don't particularly want to have to go to the courts about it. I would rather that we just legislated for this and made it happen. There isn't an automatic need for a legal challenge.
Supermarkets certainly sound like they might.
I know, but nobody's obliged to make a legal challenge. They could actually say, well, maybe in the current context, there is a need for us to just work with the government to deliver such a legislative proposal.
So you view it as a moral question?
I do, yeah.
Let's have a look at the state of public services in Scotland. You might have seen we've been doing a succession of spreads in the paper. We've done justice, education, finances, health. Respected experts, I mean, we're talking the IFS, the Fraser-Valander and others, are warning that Scotland's public services are on their knees. You've been in power for 19 years. You've been a minister, a senior minister for almost all of that. Do you take any responsibility for any of that?
I take total responsibility for everything that happens in the name of the Scottish Government.
Do you take a bit of blame for the state of the country?
Well, that's a loaded question. I take responsibility, never shirk my responsibility, but blame's a loaded question.
Why do you reject blame but you take responsibility? Because I mean, people will look...
Two very different things.
So what's different about them?
Because you have a view, you're putting to me a view that everything's rubbish. I presume that's what you're putting.
I'm putting a view that some things are rubbish.
Right. Oh, well, so we've now got a bit of differentiation in here. So that's why I say we'll take responsibility. I'm very happy to discuss issues and where are things at. Because I could say to you, and I can do it now if you want, I can say to you we've got record levels of literacy and numeracy in our schools. I could say to you that we've got dramatic falls in long waits for outpatient and inpatient treatment. I could say to you that we've got much lower levels of child poverty and falling levels of child poverty in Scotland. I could say to you that we've got more houses built in Scotland per head of population, affordable houses, than any other part of the United Kingdom, and emphatically more than our predecessors. So these are all things that have happened in Scotland. There'll be things that are not as good as they should be, and that's what my leadership is about fixing, because the health issue wasn't as good as I've just said to you when I came into office, and I set about fixing that, and I fixed it.
I think a lot of people watching this will be frustrated to hear you're not accepting blame, given how quick you are to dole it out to Brexit, COVID, the UK government.
But these are unavoidable issues. So let's look at over that period since 2007, since the SNP came to office. What else has happened? So in that time, we've had the financial crash, we've had austerity from the UK government, we've had Brexit, we've had COVID, and we've had an inflation spike from the Ukraine invasion. And we're probably about to get another inflation spike because of the war in Iran.
It can't all be somebody else's fault, though, or something else's fault.
Sorry, I'm not... Well, that's why I said I take responsibility, because I do. But I'm simply pointing out that there are factors that are inescapable, that have happened, external events that have an effect on how we can act and how we can perform.
Let's talk about the NHS. I think that's one of the big issues in the mind of voters.
Of course.
The IFS say that the NHS in Scotland is lagging behind England and Wales. They point at spending being more than pre-COVID, but that the activity is still below pre-COVID levels. I mean, the NHS hasn't recovered under the SNP in the last 5 years. It's stagnated, hasn't it?
No, it's recovering. And we've got more procedures being carried out than we had compared to last year, and we're back to pre-COVID levels on number of operations being carried out. As I said a moment ago, we've got long waits, very dramatic falls in long waits.
You missed your target on that by 36,641, and you've missed it twice.
Well, we didn't succeed in getting rid of all of the long waits for inpatients and outpatients, but we did reduce them by outpatients by 75% and inpatients by 54%. And what I would say, and we did that in a space of 10 months. So what I would say to members of the public is that demonstrates the progress that an SNP government with the focused leadership that I deliver that I offer is delivering for people in Scotland.
Well, let's hear from the BMAs. This is Dr. Ian Kennedy, who you'll know. He told us that the NHS capacity wasn't keeping pace with demand being put on the health service before COVID. He says, as a result of failing to address this, more and more people are finding the NHS is not able to provide the care they need when they need it, forcing them to go private and putting the founding principles of our NHS at risk. That could be the SNP's legacy on the health service.
There's no discernible increase in private health use in Scotland, and it drags back, it lags. I'm just telling you the data, and it lags significantly behind private health use in England.
So you don't think Dr. Ian Kennedy is telling the truth?
Look, I'm not. Listen, I've spent the end of last week dealing with people, chucking around accusations about who's telling the truth. I don't speak like that, right? I engage in reasoned debate, and what I'm saying is that the use of the private sector in Scotland lags well behind the use of the private sector in England, and we are seeing an increasing number of operations being carried out, increasing number of procedures. And one of the key things, and I'll probably agree with this with Dr. Kennedy, is that there needs to be a shift of focus in the way we deliver healthcare, which is what the public service reform strategy was about last summer, what the population health framework and the service renewal framework were all about shifting the health service from being a reactive service to a proactive service. So my manifesto proposals about some of the chest and lung MOTs to try to avoid people getting into acute situations are all about trying to support people in the earlier stage in their health journey.
So you see yourself as a serious reformer of the NHS?
Of course I am.
Fair enough. Because
that's exactly what I'm going to do.
The evidence of the 19 years suggests otherwise.
Well, I've not been First Minister for 19 years. I've only been First Minister for 2. And in that time, I've got long waits down dramatically because I delivered on my promise to the public.
Let's briefly touch on justice. On your 50 next steps for government in your manifesto, I think I went through all of them, and not one of them touches on justice. And it's despite record high prison population. We've got cops not investigating all crimes. We've got shoplifting exploding in the country, violent sexual crimes increasing. Opponents say that you've got no interest in keeping Scots safe.
I've got every interest in keeping Scots safe, and you see and there's a fundamental illogicality in that accusation put to me, because in amongst all that, you said there's an increase in the prison population. Well, if there's an increase in the prison population, people that pose a threat to public safety are now behind bars. And that's happened. There's an increased prison population on my watch. Yeah, I accept that. I take responsibility for that. That's because people that have got away with crimes for a long time are now behind bars. So I think it's just illogical to put that point to me.
Let's talk about ferries. That scandal, in a lot of voters' minds, sums up the 19 years of what they would see as SNP failure. I mean, it's £500 million wasted, all for what was a political game during the referendum in 2014.
I think you might want to go and say that to the workers whose jobs were saved at Ferguson Marine, because I think they'd have a different view of that, because their lives would have been turned upside down if they'd been thrown in the scrap heap by a disinterested government. You must
accept that the situation of the ferries is dire.
Look, I've apologised to island communities because of the delays in the delivery of 2 vessels, the Glen Rosa and the Glen Sannox and the Glen Rosa. The Glen Sannox today is sailing between Barra and Oban, and has been doing so for some time. It's in service. The SNP government since 2007 has put into service 9 new ferries, and we have 11 new on order. Another one of the new ones that's just been built was launched just at the weekend in Turkey, and it will be here in the course of the next few months. We're expecting another new vessel over the summer. This calendar year we'll have 3 new ferries, 3 new large ferries joining the fleet. So there's a lot of capacity coming into the fleet. And I accept that doesn't help people in the Easter holidays this year, which is why I put in place £10 million of why I've said that if I'm returned on Thursday, there'll be a £10 million fund available to compensate or support businesses who lost activity because of the ferry problems over the Easter holidays. And I totally accept that was disruptive. I went up to the Western Isles myself. You came and shared the ferry journey with me. I just remembered that. You came and shared the ferry journey with me, and it was a lovely ferry journey. And I hope it was choppier on the way back for you.
Very smooth.
Was it very smooth? I'd hoped it was going to be windier and choppier for you. But it was and you asked me, was I confident in coming back on the ferry? Well, I went on the ferry. I spent 2 days in the Western Isles. I came back on the ferry. I didn't just hop over on the plane for a day trip to talk about ferries. I went on the ferry. I talked to passengers. I talked to communities when I got there. I made the announcement. I came back on the ferry. I talked to passengers on the ferry about the ferry service. And I'll do that in the summer when I'm using the ferry network for my own personal holidays.
2 more questions, one hard one and then one easy one that I think you'll be used to. The Fraser Islander accuses every single Holyrood party, including the SNP, of what they term a collective bout of fiscal denial. I mean, you've got a £5 billion spending gap to fill by 2031. Experts say your manifesto bakes in cuts or tax hikes. That collective bout of fiscal denial, that's kind of what the SNP specialise in, isn't it?
No, because for 19 years the SNP has balanced the budget and lived within the resources
You don't
we've got
accept
available
that's a big challenge?
Everything's a challenge. There's lots of challenges over the course of my years in government, but we've passed the fiscal test. And then when we went to the international credit rating agencies to ask them what they thought of Scotland in relation to its borrowing capacity, what they told us was that Scotland's got prudent financial management. Now that is something that I put into place when I became Finance Minister in 2007. I was determined I was going to establish fiscal credibility for the SNP, and I did it. And we've held on to it all that time, and that's what we'll deploy in the years to come.
Because we're running out of time, this one's on you. 20 seconds, and I'll time it as well, to tell the Scottish Sun readers why they should vote for you on Thursday, on May 7th.
People should vote SNP on Thursday, so they've got a government always on Scotland's side that continues to improve the NHS, that delivers practical support with the cost of living and allows Scotland's future to be taken into Scotland's hands through a referendum on independence. And our opponents want to just get people to vote to stop us, and I say to people, don't let them. Vote for the SNP for a government that will always be on Scotland's side.
25 seconds, but close enough. One of the better efforts.
I'm sure it was,
John
as always.
John Swinney, thank you very much for talking to us.